Hi. Today I was dealing, among other things, with the cancellation of one of my flights, the holiday flights in July. And as I was patiently waiting on the phone to be rescheduled at an uncertain moment in time, I thought to myself, what better time than today to be speaking about traveling? What with the COVID-19 crisis and all, traveling's become quite space lately, as we say it in French, with an English accent, which is quite rare because normally we tend to pronounce foreign words with a French accent. Nevertheless, we enjoy pronouncing space as the English native speakers do, maybe because it gives us a feeling of, I don't know, being foreign, going somewhere, a feeling of alien, something that is not ordinary, that takes us out of the ordinary. Today I think, because of the current sanitary crisis, we all feel pretty alienated. Also because of all these social or physical distancing we've been going through. And distancing has to do with travel, with tourism eventually, because it means leaving one place and going to another place. As for myself, I prefer the phrase physical distancing, as social distancing is not only illogical, as society involves closeness, but it is also, from a psycholinguistic point of view, confusing, because it accustoms the users of this phrase to the coexistence of two opposite concepts, which is distance and society, or being social, or the social being. And these two concepts really exclude one another. And this creates an emotional, unconscious conflict, which leads eventually to confusion. So I'm not a big fan of the phrase social distancing, and I'd rather say physical distancing, if we need to say it at all. Anyways, going back to traveling and the fact that traveling, of course, involves distance. Traveling has become so complicated lately, and we notice that the rules have changed, and of course the laws and regulations, the legal terms that apply to traveling have also been modified by this new mode we're in, the new normal mode, as it is called by the World Travel and Tourism Council, as I've just discovered it today. This really sounds like George Orwell a lot, like Newspeak, doesn't it? The title, Safe Travels, Global Protocols and Stamp for the New Normal, that I found on the website of the World Travel and Tourism Council, cannot but awaken scary memories of the Orwellian dystopia. A Jurilinguist's advice, well, it would be to avoid this kind of wording. That is not at all reassuring, in spite of the elocutory shown intention of the authors of the article. Like, why do we need a new normal? Why do we need to collocate these two adjectives? Why do we need to transform normal into a noun, as we do have normalcy? Why can't we go back to our old normal? Why can't we go back to simply being normal? Why does someone want to redefine normal and tell us what it is? And of course, what criteria were used in order to define this new state of normalcy? And how can we define normal from a legal point of view? How can we define not normal? Is there an abnormal? What is the new normal legally, and so on and so forth? With all these unanswered questions in mind, and of course hoping for the best, but expecting the worst, all we can do for the moment, with all the flights and trips and trains that have been cancelled one after the other, is dream about traveling in style. And what can be more stylish and space from a French point of view, a linguistic point of view, than space travel? Now, here is a brave new world, much more appealing than the new normal that was thrown by the World Travel and Tourism Council. And this brave new world is awaiting. It's a brave new world that is already creating new legal concepts and new legal terms. Now, this is anchored in a profound wish, profound desire that defines humanity. Humanity has always wanted to conquer more and more territory. And today we're talking about moon tourism, we're talking about Mars tourism, we're talking about space tourism. What is a tourist, first of all, if we want to talk about this field of activity? Well, a tourist is someone who is traveling for pleasure. So travel and pleasure are strongly connected when we, and necessarily connected when we need to talk about tourism and the tourism industry and laws and regulations that apply to tourism. The word tourism, interestingly, comes from the Hebrew root tur, which already appeared in the Bible with the meaning to explore and to visit. And so today we're no longer content with our earthly trips and travels, and we wish to go where no one has gone before. And we, being part of this species that is called Homo juridicus, we need to do that by the rules. And rules we have. And we've been having them for 50 years or so. As early as the 1970s, the late 1960s, and then 1980s, we could notice that this keen interest in space travel resulted in some very interesting international treaties, which seem to belong to science fiction literature more than legal literature. For instance, there is the Moon Treaty, which seems taken out of a Jules Verne's novel. The full name and the official name of this treaty is the Agreement Governing the Activities of States on the Moon and Other Celestial Bodies. It entered into force in 1984. Before that, there was the Outer Space Treaty, or Treaty on Principles Governing the Activities of States in the Exploration and Use of Outer Space, including the Moon and other celestial bodies. And this one dates back to 1967. Space commercial activities have been developing rapidly, and this, of course, triggers a need for the evolution of space law, which at an international level can be very challenging. Each country preferring to create their own space legislation on space commercial activities. In September 2018, the first potential space tourist was revealed by the owner of the company SpaceX, Elon Musk. The Japanese man, eager to experience this new type of tourism, will fly around the moon by 2023. Needless to say, by then there will have to be a very solid legal framework with clear legal terms and clear legal definitions about space tourism. If we look a little bit further, we discover that space tourism is not only a private business. The United States Federal Aviation Administration created the startup Moon Express in 2016 under the Outer Space Treaty, which may mean that in the very near future, we may see the beginning of moon hotels to host moon tourists, which means that new legal definitions will have to be made and new forms of contracts will have to be imagined. that different issues will need to be addressed, such as liability in case of accidents, information on the risks incurred, insurance practices, safety regulations, applicable law. Jurists have already done a lot of work in this new legal field, and they have identified several branches of space tourism. They've already put space travel into two categories: leisure or business, and then they identified orbital tourism, but also suborbital tourism, lunar space tourism. Another question will be that of space tourism vehicles, which will have to be developed, of course, and with them new sets of regulations and a specific terminology, of course. It seems today that Jules Verne's visionary novels are becoming reality. Precise legal definitions have already been concocted by legal professionals in the field of space travel, such as the definition of the suborbital rocket, defined in the US Commercial Space Launch Amendments Act of 2004. However, when it comes to less technical terms, these risk to be a little bit more difficult to define. If we take, for instance, spationauts, cosmonauts, astronauts, space tourists, these are terms referring to future customers of travel agencies whose activities will be governed by different local national laws. So it will be difficult to obtain a harmonization and standardization of the definitions of these new terms that will define new types of customers for new travel agencies, or at least for new products that will be commercialized by travel agencies. And then another question may arise: can customers really be construed as cosmonauts or as astronauts? As we know, and as we've been used to considering this concept, an astronaut is a term that refers to a highly qualified professional who travels in the field of space, who works in the field of space travel, and who is also a scientist. So the question that the jurilinguist and the terminologist might ask himself or herself is, will this term evolve semantically? Will this term acquire a more general meaning while merging with the term tourist? Will this term become despecialized, or will this term re-specialize within the new field of space law? From a translator's point of view, the creation of new terminology will also trigger the need for standardization of the space tourism terminology and the space law terminology, which will raise, of course, several questions and several challenges. However, and given the local nature of space tourism regulations, it may be difficult, as I was saying, it may be difficult to unify all the legal reference and all the legal definitions. For example, in Italian, there are already specific terms which belong to the field of space tourism, such as spazioporti, trasporto spaziale, voli suborbitali. And these terms coexist with English words and phrases, such as space mining, this coexistence being a characteristic of the Italian language, which allows a lot of permeability to English and American borrowings, which can be explained from a historical and cultural point of view. Still today, or going back to today's sanitary crisis, we can see that the new coronavirus seems to be imposing a new global order on us, a global order from which traveling on Earth might be prohibited or at least strictly restricted. Are we going to turn to space travel for our holidays? Are we going to consider going to live in a Martian colony, for example? And if yes, under what form of government? Under what laws and under what regulations? And will a moon citizen or a Mars citizen or a space citizen have the same rights and obligations as a citizen on Earth? Will, for instance, a German on the moon be submitted to German laws or to moon laws? And what will those moon laws be? Or to a mix of both? And will the children of space tourists or space colonists be still considered to be human beings? As it is asked in an article that was published by the Italian Futuri magazine that speaks about the legal challenges of space commercial activities. Be that as it may, one thing is certain today: sky is the limit.